Good day. In this video, we will be discussing the nervous system, its parts, and their respective functions.
Before the presentation starts, here are the things that you must know. The anatomy of a neuron, the mechanisms of impulse transmission in a neuron, the process that leads to the release of neurotransmitters, and what happens at the synapse. How the vertebrate brain integrates information which leads to an appropriate response. And, lastly, different regions of the brain have different functions. The nervous system consists of two divisions, the sensory division and the motor division. The sensory division, also known as the efferent division, transmits information from the periphery to the central nervous system. It also contains receptors. It consists of two parts, the somatic sensory and the visceral sensory. The somatic sensory receives sensory information from skin, fascia, joints, skeletal muscles, and special senses, while the visceral sensory receives sensory information from the viscera. On the other hand, the motor division, also known as the efferent division, transmits information from the central nervous system to the rest of the body. It also sends motor information to effectors. It consists of two parts, the somatic motor and the autonomic motor. The somatic motor, also known as the voluntary nervous system, innervates skeletal muscle, while the autonomic motor, also known as the involuntary nervous system, innervates cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. The nervous system consists of two major parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is the basis of all mental and behavioral activity. It also contains 99% of all the neurons. It consists of the brain, which carries out the higher and more complex mental and behavioral activities, and the spinal cord, which carries out the simpler levels of behavioral organization. The peripheral nervous system gets all the information into the brain and controls directly all responses a person makes. It consists of the following: cranial nerves, ganglia outside the central nervous system, and spinal nerves.
Our nervous system has three principal functions: sensory, integration, and motor output. Sensory is the stimuli that is perceived by our senses like smell, sight, touch, taste, and hearing. For example, when you suddenly hold a hot object, the sensory receptor on your palm detects that it is hot. Then this is your sensory input. Then the nervous system processes that input and decided what should be done about. And that's called integration. Integration is the process of combining information from many sources. Lastly, the motor output will response that occur when your nervous system activates certain parts of your body. So, when you hold hot object, your response will be putting it down or release it. The nervous system is divided into two parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system includes the brain and spinal cord, while peripheral nervous system includes all of the nerves that branch out from the brain and spinal cord and extend other parts of the body, including muscles and organs. It is the one that puts your brain in touch with physical environment and allows it to respond. The peripheral nervous system itself is divided into two parts, the somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system derives its name from the Greek word soma, which means body. The somatic system is responsible for carrying sensory and motor information to and from the central nervous system. This system contains two major types of neurons, the sensory neurons and the motor neurons. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for regulating involuntary body functions such as blood flow, heartbeat, digestion, and breathing. This system is further divided into three branches: the sympathetic division, the parasympathetic division, and the enteric division. The sympathetic division will prepare your body to expand and deal with potential threats in the environment. It will trigger a response by speeding up the heart rate, increasing blood flow to muscles, activating sweat secretion, and dilating the pupils. The parasympathetic division helps maintain normal body function and conserve physical resources. This will allow us to return our body to a normal resting state. The sympathetic and parasympathetic division tend to have opposed action in which one system will stimulate a response where the other will inhibit it. For example, the sympathetic division will act to raise blood pressure while the parasympathetic division will act to lower it. The two divisions will work in conjunction to manage the bodies depending upon the situation and need. Lastly, the enteric division is confined to a gastrointestinal tract. It is capable of acting independently of the sympathetic and parasympathetic division, although it may be influenced by them.
The autonomic nervous system regulates certain body processes such as blood pressure and the rate of breathing. The system works automatically without a person's conscious effort. It is part of the nervous system that supplies the internal organs, including the blood vessels, stomach, intestine, liver, kidney, bladder, genitals, lungs, pupils, heart, and sweat and salivary and digestive glands. Parts of the autonomic nervous system requires two neurons in order to work. Those neurons meet in the ganglia, cluster of neuron cells that body the house of millions of synapses. The autonomic nervous system has two main divisions, the parasympathetic nervous system, or PNS, the sympathetic nervous system, or SNS. The parasympathetic nervous system is one of the divisions of the autonomic nervous system, and it's located in the brainstem cranial nerve nuclei, or the autonomic columns of the sacral spinal cord, as you can see in the image presented. To portray the process of the PNS, imagine if our body system is out of control, like our heart beats faster than normal. The PNS job is to calm the body when stressed out. Not only that, it is also the reason of our digestion, reproduction, and excretion of waste. The parasympathetic ganglia is located way out of the spine, near or even inside the effector organ. An effector organ is an organ that responds to stimulus to a muscle, and originating in the cranial sacral region, that is from the brainstem and also the sacral plexus. Specifically, the parasympathetic nervous system is concerned with three cranial nerves. It is responsible for the body's rest and digestion response when the body is relaxed, resting, or feeding. It basically undoes the work of sympathetic division after a stressful situation. It decreases respiration and heart rate and increases digestion. Stimulation of the parasympathetic nervous system results in constriction of pupils, decreased heart rate and blood pressure, constriction of bronchial muscles, increase in digestion, increased production of saliva and mucus, increase in urine secretion. The sympathetic nervous system are often termed the flight or fight response. The fight or flight response activates the secretion of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Like other parts of the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system operates through a series of interconnected neurons. It is the opposite of the PNS. It is the system that excites organs in our body to work as they should. The sympathetic ganglia is found closer to the spinal cord, as shown in the image, or the thoracolumbar area, from between your thoracic and lumbar vertebrae. The sympathetic nervous system accelerates heart rate, widen bronchial passages, decrease motility of the large intestine, constrict blood vessels, increase in peristalsis in the esophagus, cause pupillary dilation, piloerection or goosebumps, and perspiration, sweating, and raise of blood pressure. When light acts as a stimulus, the pupil of the eye changes in size. That's one example for reflex. Reflex, or reflexes, is an involuntary and nearly instantaneous movement in response to a stimuli. What is the reflex arc? The reflex arc is responsible to protect the body from damage. Some reflex example is when we touch something and our hands respond immediately by moving our hands away from the source. The reflex arc is the neural pathway that controls reflex. Compared to the invertebrates like insects, our sensory neurons, mostly synapses, are located in the spinal cord. It allows faster reflex by activating motor neurons. The structure that permits a neuron or nerve cell to pass an electrical or chemical signal to another neuron or to the target effector cell is called the synapse. Receptor is a protein molecule that recognizes and responds to endogenous chemical signals. Sensory neuron, also known as afferent neurons, convert specific type of stimulus via receptors. And the motor neuron is the one that indirectly controls effector organ, the muscle or glands. In the interneuron, a neuron which transmits impulses between other neurons. An effector organ is any muscle or organ that responds to a stimulus from a nerve.
Next is the knee-jerk reflex. The knee-jerk reflex involves the sudden kicking movement of your lower leg after the tendon just below your kneecap has been tapped. Doctors often trigger this reflex to test the functions of your nervous system. If the reaction is exaggerated or absent, it may indicate a damage to the central nervous system. The vertebrate brain is divided into three major divisions: the hindbrain, the midbrain, and the forebrain. The structure and functions of the hindbrain and the midbrain in humans is very similar to those in lower animals. The forebrain, which is more highly developed in the human, is the division that distinguishes human from other mammals. The forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain are the three main parts of the brain. The forebrain has two major parts called the gincephalon and the telencephalon. The forebrain is responsible for a number of functions related to thinking, perceiving, and evaluating sensory information. The midbrain, also called the mesencephalon, connects the hindbrain and the forebrain. It is associated with motor functions and auditory and visual responses. The hindbrain contains both the mesencephalon and the melencephalon. The hindbrain is associated with balance and equilibrium and the coordination of movement along with the autonomic functions like our breathing and our heart rate. Both the midbrain and the hindbrain make up the brainstem.
The cerebrum is a major structure in the brain, composed of the right and left hemispheres, which work together to control both sides of the body. The right hemisphere controls the left side of the body and vice versa. The two hemispheres are divided by the longitudinal fissure and connected by the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is a bundle of neuron fibers that communicates the messages of both hemispheres to each other. The cerebrum performs higher functions. These include interpreting touch, vision and hearing, speech, reasoning, emotions, learning, and fine control of movement. The left brain is generally responsible for language and speech. The right brain interprets visual information and spatial processing. The brainstem connects the cerebrum and cerebellum to the spinal cord. It controls the flow of messages between the brain and the rest of the body. It performs many automatic functions, such as breathing, heart rate, body temperature, wake and sleep cycles, digestion, sneezing, coughing, vomiting, and swallowing. The cerebellum is located under the cerebrum. Its function is to coordinate muscle movements, maintain posture, and balance. It does this by receiving messages from the spinal cord and sensory systems to regulate motor movements. There are two kinds of tissues in the central nervous system: gray matter and white matter. The gray matter is composed of cell bodies, dendrites, and axon terminals of the neurons. This is where the synapses are found. They send nerve signals that control motor activities to autonomic nerves. White matter is made of axons connecting different parts of gray matter to each other. White matter sends nerve signals up and down the spinal cord.